Hi everyone, happy Saturday. I hope you guys are enjoying your weekend. And if you are local to us, the cooler temperatures, I know they're not quite here to stay, but at least we can enjoy while we can. It's certainly starting to feel a little bit more like fall for me. And while my videos used to be a weekly thing, they've definitely become more of a monthly thing now. Our schedule has just really picked back up again at work and with school, and I like to make sure that I'm putting out quality information for you guys, and that often takes some time with the research that goes into it. So hopefully this month's topic will be useful to you guys. One of the things that I have been seeing in my office these last 4 weeks is a concerning amount of anxiety and depression in our kids. And honestly, I think a lot of this may be related to the onset of distance learning that started about 4 weeks ago, but it's not entirely because of that. I think our kids have actually been under a huge amount of stress, sometimes even unbeknownst to them or us, for the last 6 months, even before school started. And it was just distance learning that literally was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so I wanted to provide some help for you guys in this respect from my general pediatrician point of view. I am certainly not a mental health expert like my psychology and psychiatry colleagues, but I do think that this video may be able to provide some insight to you as parents, aunts, uncles, caretakers, grandparents, as to how to navigate what your child may be going through right now and how to help as well. So first, what are some signs of anxiety or depression in kids? This can often be quite different from what adults experience, and it can vary by age, it can vary by special needs and developmental level as well. And it's important to realize that some of these signs, when not necessarily affecting their daily functioning, are part of their lives in terms of being developmentally normal, and we'll talk about that as well. So in young children, let's say 1 to 5 years of age, you may see more tantrums, you may see sleep regression, you may be seeing that they hit, either they bang their own heads or they're hitting others or they're biting. But again, remember that some of those things are going to be developmentally normal in certain phases of a child's life. And just because they have one of these behaviors for a short amount of time doesn't always mean that there is an issue. You want to place these behaviors in the context of everything else that's going on. And so sometimes parents will literally just tell me that their kids are really not acting like the kids that they've known for so long. There's just something wrong, but the parents can't necessarily articulate it or pinpoint it. Or maybe these types of behaviors are becoming quite prolonged and just really becoming problematic. And then in the slightly older age group, 5 to 12-year-olds, this is the age group where anxiety and depression may actually present itself with more somatic or body complaints. They might complain of tummy aches a lot. They might complain of arms and legs and hands and just different things hurting. They may be complaining of headaches. That in part could also be to the screen time, or it could be related to more of a mental health issue as well. They might have more of a difficulty concentrating or carrying out simple tasks. You may find that they're more emotional. But again, remember, your 11 and 12-year-olds in this age group are naturally going to be more emotional because their hormones are starting to pick up. You might see a change in their appetite or their sleep. Or you may just see these outbursts that remind you of tantrums when they were little, where they just can't reel themselves back in. And then lastly, in our older group, the 13 to 18-year-olds, they may be demonstrating signs of extreme fear or telling you about fears that they have that they never had before, even to the point of fear of dying. They may be having panic attacks. They may have a difficult time being out in society. Even just going to the grocery store with you starts to really make them feel more anxious. You may start to see that they are controlling what they eat, or that you may think they're starting to develop some type of eating disorder, because controlling their calories, oftentimes, especially for girls, is a way to help them feel as though they are in control of what's happening in their lives. You may see that they don't want to ever come out of their bedroom. And again, remember, these are teenagers, so this can be normal in a certain context, or it can be a problem as well. you find that they don't want to do anything, including the things that they once got a lot of joy from, whether that was socializing with their friends, doing their sports, doing their athletics, even their video games. They just don't want to do any of it. You may find that they're constantly oppositional to you, or demonstrating signs of self-harm or self-neglect. So just a few signs. It's definitely not an all-inclusive list, but it is something to get you started with. For our special needs kids, I think that many of the signs are similar. They may just not necessarily fall into the actual age group that the child is. So you may see that a 7 or 8-year-old who has special needs may demonstrate more tantrums or hitting or biting rather than what I mentioned for their actual age group. And anxiety is a part of our lives. To varying degrees. And certainly most of us, I think, have had more of it in these last 6 months. And in fact, 1 in 7 kids will actually develop emotional or behavioral problems before becoming adults. So it's not as though this is uncommon, but it also doesn't mean that we need to just do nothing about it and hope that it magically goes away. So what are things that you guys can do in order to help your child if you suspect that they may be struggling emotionally, either with depression or anxiety, or even just a low level of it? I think the first one, most important, is to listen to them, obviously if they are of speaking age. And that doesn't mean talk to them or talk at them. It means listen to them. The first 1 or 2 conversations, I don't even want you to offer them advice or a solution. I just want you to let them talk to you, and I want you to listen, and I want you to take what they are saying seriously. As a parent, as a mom, as a doctor, many times when people talk to me and they tell me their problems, the first thing I want to do is just shout out a solution or what I think might help. But I don't know that that is always the right thing to do. It's really important to listen to what other people have to say, because it makes them feel heard and it makes them feel validated. And a lot of the times that is part of the therapeutic or healing process, is just letting them get it out. And if you immediately offer your mom or dad solution, they stop talking and then they shut down again. And then you just end up back at square one. Even though you may have had a great solution, they're not going to hear it because they themselves did not get heard in the first place. Number 2, show interest in things that they are interested in, even if you're not interested in it. If it's their roadblocks or Roblox or Minecraft or their sports or their friends or this or that, certain things that kids get really into that don't necessarily suit your fancy, still talk to them about it, ask them about it, because it shows that you are interested in them. It shows them that you are an advocate for them and that you care about them. Number 3, I know this is a hard one, establish some routines. And I do think this is a good part about distance learning, because it has forced our kids to get up at a certain time. It's forced them to go to sleep at a certain time, but you definitely need to help maintain this. I think kids, and especially our teens, tend to resist schedules a bit. They want to stay up really late. They want to sleep in really late. But consistency is what our brain tends to thrive off of. And I think that it just naturally performs better when it knows what to expect. And I know this is a lot to ask of you, because many of you are spending so many hours a day helping people, or namely your children, with distance learning. But if you can clean up their diets and you can get them outside and playing, it truly makes a world of difference, not only to their bodies, but to their minds as well. Number 4, remind them that they are not the only ones that are going through this. And I think this is important for you guys as parents. Obviously, I'm on here making this video because you guys are not alone in having these difficulties. I'm seeing so much more of it just in my own pediatric practice. And I can imagine it is a much more widespread issue above and beyond my little office. And as I mentioned, 1 in 7 kids go through some type of emotional or behavioral difficulty before they become adults. And that was a statistic pre-COVID. So you can only imagine now, as we have taken these kiddos away from school and away from their friends and away from their extracurricular activities, that to see them go through these struggles is not uncommon. They are not alone in this process. And number 5, if you really feel as though the anxiety and the depression and the difficulties are coming from distance learning or from school, then I would really talk to them about adjusting their expectations. This type of school is not ideal for most, and it is not permanent. Some of our kids are really frustrated because they can't keep up. And this may be because they struggled with school to begin with, or it may be because they were overachievers and now they're not being able to maintain the same type of grades that they did when they were in regular schools. But I will tell you, in my opinion, as a pediatrician, it is really more important for me, or for them, I should say, to learn a little bit during this time, but stay happy and healthy and well adjusted than it is to power through at any expense and have a 4.0 for the first quarter in school, but yet be emotionally breaking down through this process. So, number 6, consider talking to their teachers. I think that our teachers in general are great advocates for these kids. They themselves are having a lot of different difficulties week to week with maintaining distance learning, but at the end of the day, I think sometimes just having a personal conversation with them may give you a lot of insight as to what you can do to help your child as well. And last but not least, limit their exposure to the screens after school. And again, I know this is hard, but the weather is getting better, the air quality is better, and so get them outside, get them looking up, get them looking at other people, get them looking at the horizon. It will be so much better for their eyes and their brains and their minds as well, to get off those screens at the end of the school day. And quite honestly, right now, social media is sometimes an ugly place to be, and the news is not any more helpful, and they just don't need to keep taking all of it in constantly while they're also trying to deal with distance learning and their own emotional well-being. So another question I wanted to tackle is, when do our kids need help sort of above and beyond utilizing those measures that I just spoke about? And that can be difficult for parents to figure out. I think naturally we just tend to hope that they'll figure things out on their own and it'll get better with time, because it's hard to say that or admit that our kids are having problems with anxiety or depression. But some signs of when you should seek help for your kids is when it's getting worse, and maybe rapidly so, as opposed to better as the days go on. When you find that these different self-help techniques are just not working. Either you can't even get them off the ground because they are so resistant to your ideas, or you do get them off the ground, but they're not making a difference. Number 3, it's affecting their schoolwork, their friendships, family dynamics, or even their own physical health. And lastly, never underestimate your gut feeling as a parent. This is something I take very seriously when my parents tell me, I don't know what it is, I can't describe it, there's just something wrong. And that's when I look, because you know your child very well. And if something in your gut is telling you that something is not right, that's when it's time to seek some additional help. Worst case scenario, you were wrong and your child is doing great. That's fantastic. Or you were actually right, which is usually the case, and we can start working on getting your child the help that he or she needs. And then, speaking of help, what kind of help are you going to look for? I think oftentimes your pediatrician is probably going to be your first line of support, namely to help determine if there is a problem at all, which again, if you're there, probably is, and what level of support your child may need. I think therapy through a licensed psychologist is probably our mainstay or our first approach. And again, sometimes this feels taboo, like, gosh, my child needs therapy, but we have to get out of that mindset of thinking of therapy as a bad thing. In my opinion, therapy to address anxiety or depression or emotional or behavioral disturbances is really, quite honestly, no different than physical therapy or occupational therapy or speech therapy. They are all different modalities to help our kids be better. And this type of therapy may be individual if you have an older child, or it may be family oriented. It really just depends on the circumstances as well as the age of your child. Very rarely it may involve medication. And again, I know you guys jump at this, and I will tell you, gosh, like 9.9 times out of 10 for me, I am going to start therapy first. But once in a while, you come across a kiddo who is really struggling and has really sort of started to downward spiral, and we may need to be a little bit more aggressive. But again, that doesn't come without an open discussion with you as well as with your child. And we try to make everything work and get them better as quickly as we can. In terms of therapy, it can be in person or it can be virtual. I think there are good things and bad things about both of these options. In one sense, our kids are very screen fatigued right now, and so that human interaction may do them worlds of good. But at the same time, with school and work constraints and the way that our kids are just better at communicating on their phones, a virtual option may be something that they like or they feel more comfortable with as well. So those are just some tips and tricks. From what I have been hearing, it does sound like we are moving towards getting more and more kids back into school. And I hope that this will definitely help with the things that they are struggling with right now. But I wouldn't necessarily just wait on it and say, well, as soon as they go back to school, they'll be totally fine. Because as we all know, dates can be pushed back 1 week, 2 weeks, a month at the drop of a hat. And we've done a pretty good job, I have to say, in terms of keeping our numbers at bay, especially after Labor Day. But still, some schools are open and some classes have had to close for 2 weeks because of a child in that class having tested positive for COVID-19. And so we have to remember that just sending them back to school is not sort of an automatic guarantee that all their problems are just magically going to go away and they're going to be in school indefinitely after that. And quite honestly, I think it's better to have them emotionally in a better place before they resume in-person school than to really be struggling and at their wits' end before having to all of a sudden walk on a campus that they haven't been on for 6 months. If you are looking for online resources for your kiddos, I am going to post these in the comments. I think that'll probably be the easiest way for you guys to access them. Some of them are, I think, really good and very useful to you guys as parents. And last but not least, I couldn't let this go. Please do not forget to take care of yourselves as caretakers or parents, as well as your own mental health. This has been a trying time, to say the least, for all of us over these last 6 months, and it is going to get a whole lot rowdier in these next few weeks. And we tend to give and then give some more of ourselves to others. But we forget to actually take care of ourselves a lot of the time, thinking that it may be selfish. And this, to me, is really incorrect thinking for 2 reasons. One, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you never take time for yourself, then how can you give of yourself indefinitely? And you will find that when you do take a little bit of time for yourself, you actually can give to others more effectively and more efficiently. And number 2, your kids are watching you. So again, if you never take time for yourselves, you're teaching them that that's the way to be an adult. And then they too can often suffer the repercussions of this as well. And what you do for yourself can be lavish weekends at the spa, or it could be as simple as waking up 10 minutes early and taking some time to think or meditate or journal or practice gratitude. It could be a 10-minute walk in the evenings. It could be a cup of tea uninterrupted. Imagine that. But never underestimate the power of simplicity and what it can do when you just take a few minutes every day for yourself to recharge. So that is it for now. In a couple of weeks, I do want to come back on and talk about Halloween, because I do not think that this is a holiday that we have to take away from our kids or from you guys if you love it as much as I do. But I do think we have to adjust it a bit. Luckily, this holiday involves being outdoors and it involves masking already, so that should make it a bit easier. But I do have some other good ideas for you in terms of trick-or-treating and also just being able to weigh out some of the risks and benefits depending on your own family dynamic. And again, it's so important that we keep our numbers down over this holiday, because our kids' schooling truly depends on it. If the numbers start to surge back up, I would absolutely hate to see that schools that we're planning to open don't open, or that we start to get too many cases in the schools and the schools have to close, because the majority of our kids need to be learning in a classroom right now, and I think that has to be our ultimate focus. So that's it for today, you guys. I hope this was helpful. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.